Welcome, everybody. Happy New Year. I think it's still safe to say that. And my name is David Levine. I'm chairman of Science Writers in New York, which is probably the largest regional science writing group. And I'm very pleased to have Susan Shapiro as my guest. And I'm even more pleased to have her as she's going to moderate this and interview the people, which is what I usually do. So now I can just sit back and relax. So who is Susan Shapiro? Susan Shapiro freelances for the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, Oprah, New York Magazine, and the New Yorker Magazine online. She's the author and co-author of many books that her family hates, including the bestsellers American Shield and Unhooked, the memoirs Five Men Who Broke My Heart, and The Forgiveness Tour, and the popular writing guides, The Byline Bible and Book Bible. She's an award-winning writing professor at NYU, the New School and Columbia University, and she specialized in helping students land editors, agents, and book deals. And she currently teaches all this stuff online. So Susan, I'm turning it over to you.
Thank you. Happy New Year. Great to see everybody. And thanks very much to David and to Jennifer for putting this together for us. And congratulations to, these are all former students who have brilliant new books out that we're going to talk about. So I'll just go probably from the bottom, from the Hollywood movie square. So I'll just introduce everybody briefly. Jody M. Savage is the author of the debut essay collection, The Death of a Jaybird. Orlando Mendiola is the author of the picture book, The Last Tamale. HarperCollins, Banning Lion, is the author of the recent memoir, Penguin Random House, The Chair and the Valley. Lena Zeldovich is the author of the nonfiction science book, The Living Medicine. Michelle Bang is the author of the upcoming book in February, Sun and Sun. How do you say it? Sukrat? Michelle?
Sukrat.
Sukrat. Okay, good. And Raj Towney, All Mixed Up, which is his debut middle grade book. Zibby Owens has several books out, but we're talking about her best-selling anthology that's been on the USA Today bestsellers list for 8 weeks, On Being Jewish. Nicole Kane, her debut book just came out from Penguin, Panic Proof. Robert Markowitz has his debut novel, let's see, sorry.
Clown Shoes.
Clown Shoes, from Heliotrope Books. And Trip Wetzel has his new book on Norman Lear from Applause that just came out. So congratulations on all the books, everybody. And so first question I want to ask is, what's the secret weapon that helped you land your book? So let's start with Jody. A lot of people want to do essay collections, and everyone's saying that essay collections and memoirs are a little bit tricky, and people always get it wrong. They always put together all the essays they published and say, here, give me money for this, and nobody wants to do that. So what's the secret when you put together a proposal to sell your essay collection? Was it all original material? Did it have a theme? Tell us how you, what's your secret weapon?
Sure. So they all had a theme. They were all centered around grief and illness, and family dynamics, specifically mother-daughter relationships. When we went on submission, half of the book was written. So 5 of the essays were already written. And once I got the book deal, I had to write the additional 6. But I think the biggest secret weapon was being very clear about the type of book I wanted to write and the topic. So I was very clear that I wanted to write an essay collection. I had initially tried to write a straight traditional memoir about caregiving and Alzheimer's disease. But as time went on, I realized that I actually preferred the flexibility and experimentation of essays. And so being very clear that I wanted it to be an essay collection was really important, because when we went on submission, there were editors who said that they would have preferred a memoir, and so they passed. But I did get a book deal for an essay collection because I was very clear about that.
And I love that it was original material. That's the biggest mistake I see people make. So that's great to know. Orlando, so you wrote a picture book, a debut picture book, The Last Tamale. And I remember, interestingly, unlike a lot of people, you didn't write the whole book and then pitch it. I remember when you took my class, you were listening to what the kidlit editors wanted. And it seemed as if you heard them and then you took what they said and fit into what they were looking for. Is that correct?
Yes. When I took Sue's book class, which was very crucial in helping me get attention for the book deal and ultimately get the book deal. And I was asking questions like, do you need an illustrator? What kind of stories are you looking for at the moment? And they said at the time it was own voices, so like very diverse stories. And so I had the idea for the last tamale from making tamales with my family growing up. So that kind of gave me the motivation to write the story and uh, reach out to agents.
Yeah, and I love the fact that my shrink always used to say to me, hang out with people you want to be. So I love the fact that you were like meeting book editors and agents that were doing Kidlit and asking them really good questions. I thought that was a really smart way to start. Great. Okay, Banning Lion. I know you wrote the entire memoir, The Chair in the Valley. And I remember when you took my class, you said that you already had a literary agent, but it's such a tough market for memoirs that you thought if you could publish a short piece, that might give you traction. So tell us about that, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, my book was completely done. I had written, by the time I wrote the essay that got me the book deal, I had spent 5 years writing my book and rewriting my book, and I knew it had to be incredibly tight because the market for memoirs is so incredibly difficult. And I'm a relative nobody. I mean, at the time of publishing, I had like 90 followers on Twitter. I'm really a social media nobody. And if you read any blogs on getting a memoir deal, pretty much everybody says you either need to be a celebrity or you need to have an incredible story. And even then, your chances are slim. So I went into writing the essay knowing that I had a really great book. I had an incredible literary agent, and I just needed to get some traction and some attention on my story. And so I wrote the essay very, very quickly for the Washington Post. I kind of targeted, I knew exactly what column I wanted it in, and Inspired Life. And you connected me with that editor. And so wrote the piece and sent it to her, pitched it, and an hour later had sold it to the Washington Post. And really didn't get a whole lot of actual interest from publishers immediately. But about a month passed, and my agent called me one day and said, "Do you know who Maria Shriver is?" Which I thought was a joke. And it turns out Maria Shriver had read was interested in reading my manuscript. And so my agent turned it over to her, and that's what led to the book deal.
Good. And if you don't mind, the Inspired Life is called When I Was 15, a psychiatric hospital nearly ruined my life. This advice saved me. And it says, by the time I left the hospital, I was the scattered wreckage of a teenager. And by the way, what I thought was amazing about your piece was that you had such a horrible time when you got thrown into this corrupt psychiatric hospital when your family and teachers thought you were depressed. And it was such a horrible story. But I love the fact that for the Inspired Life column, you wrote 1,000 words of inspiration about what healed you,
Mm-hmm.
right? And I thought that was really smart. And there's some short pieces that you could pitch, but in your case, in this Inspired Life at Washington Post, you just wrote 1,000 words, right?
Yeah, I did. I wrote 1,000 words. I knew, like I said, I knew Inspired Life. It's pretty much a very solid format, 1,000 words, and I knew very much like what you just said, which is, and I think this doesn't just go for essays; it goes for really memoirs, especially as well as there needs to be a ray of hope there, even if the story is very, very dark, which mine is. There needs to be a ray of hope. If it's just a downer, especially in the current political environment and the world nowadays, that's not what people want to read. So there really needs to have that ray of hope in it.
Great. Yeah, I thought that was a really smart way to do it. So Lena, you did something really interesting, which was usually people write a book and then they go to the agent. And I know you had a former book, The Other Dark Matter, that did really well. But when it came to this book, it sounds like you were discussing with your agent, what should you write now? Because you're a science writer, you have all all these great clips, and your agent actually pushed you towards this one. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So I write popular science books. I'm a popular science journalist. And it was early in the pandemic before we went into lockdowns or anything. People got interested in viruses. I think might have been like the end of January 2020, and my agent was talking to me, asking me, what do I know? What do I know about virus? Like, what kind of an interesting topic I can come up with? And I said, well, I mean, generally people think of viruses as being really bad things, but there's a certain type of virus that actually helps us because it can kill bacteria, and particularly antibiotic resistant bacteria. And she was like immediately hooked, and she wanted to know more. And I started researching it, and COVID came, and all sorts of things happened. But she really liked this idea, and we kept working on the proposal. And in 2021, once kind of the worst of COVID was over, and we kind of like life was coming back to normal, she sold that book to St. Martin Press, and right now, this book has been published, reprinted in the US, and we just had a sale with to Poland, and we have some other things going on. So
Fantastic. And it's interesting because I think, I mean, I always joke if you get 12 writers together and you ask them how they launched their book, you'll get 12 different answers, which is what we have here. But it's interesting that both you and Orlando sort of first listened to agents and editors and then made a decision, which is something that I do often, especially when I short pieces. Like if I meet an editor, if I meet editors or agents, I ask them what they're looking for first. And I sort of understand the market because I feel like I'm less likely to get rejected that way because I'm paying attention to externals that I normally wouldn't. So that's really interesting. Now, Michelle, with your upcoming book, what's interesting is I always say to people, like, pick a topic, pick a category, pick one category. What shelf are you on in the bookstore? And what I find fascinating with your debut book is that you've actually combined three different genres. It's Asian culture, environmental activism, and wellness. So can you tell us how you came up with the proposal for your book?
Yeah, I'm a social impact entrepreneur with no previous experience with published writing, either with articles or a book, but I'm happy to say that I've been fortunate to gain 5 book deals before launch with HarperCollins in the US, Hachette in the UK, and with 3 other publishers for German, Italian, and Spanish translations and at auction. And they even asked me to illustrate the book and the book cover, which has been really surprising. I would say my secret weapon, going back to your original question, is twofold. The first is taking your class. I listened to feedback. So I took your pitch class and your book class. And, although previously I'd really enjoyed writing and, reading books personally, I'd never taken any formalized writing classes before your classes. But witnessing through your classes how you and the editors responded to the pitches and the specific language. And like you said, choosing the right book genre and comps was essential training for me, especially now that I really understand how little time the agents and editors have given the massive supply of aspiring authors there are out there. So thank you so much for creating that community. And I would say I had no connections in the publishing industry. So I went on the internet, researched which literary agents I would really want to work with, and cold pitched a few paragraph query to them. And I knew I had something when some of the big agents in New York City responded in 5 minutes. When I was ready to go to the acquisition meeting, I wrote a 60-page proposal. Again, researching on the internet. And I wrote it very much like, so my background is entrepreneurial and I'm very used to writing business plans. So I kind of thought about how the book would be positioned, who would be, holding the book, reading the book. And the 3 intersections that you mentioned are really, from my research, my background, and kind of just dreaming up a world of, that I wanted to live in, and, combining my insights to, try to see if I could share lessons that would be really interesting for people. So in my background, the pitching helped. And I think, just trying to understand how to use the book process creation to find a way to create a meaningful product that people would really enjoy.
Cool. Cool. And Raj, so Raj last year did a debut memoir, Colorful Palette, A Flavorful Journey Through a Mixed American Experience with Fordham University Press. And interestingly, you wrote, and I know in my class you published tons of great nonfiction pieces, but now you took a similar story of having a multicultural background, of being part Indian, Puerto Rican, and Italian, and you made it into a fictional middle grade novel. So could you tell us a little bit about that? So All Mixed Up just came out, and in both cases you wound up with small presses, which is interesting. So you want to tell us a little bit about why you took a chance on a small press this time?
Yeah, sure. Well, long story short, I've been publishing essays for about 7 years now. I've written for the New York Times, the Washington Post, and USA Today, a lot of really great newspapers and magazines around the country. So I was able to establish my voice by writing a lot of these essays, and it was also a great testing ground for, what I was interested in writing in. So I wrote a lot about identity, family, food, culture, and people were responding really positively. I would get a lot of emails from readers, so it was really encouraging. Long story short, I had an agent. It didn't really work out, but I had this really great proposal that I had worked on. So a couple years went by. I shopped it around myself to smaller presses. I got a few offers. I went with Fordham University Press because it's largely a New York story. And so the book's been doing really well as an indie book. And then before I decided to sign with an agent, which I just recently did a few weeks ago, I shopped it around to some other places, and Baker and Taylor, which is a great distributor, they just started a children's imprint called Paw Prints Publishing, and they really believed in the book and diverse storytelling. So I signed that deal before Colorful Palette even came out, kind of building on the momentum of the first book and now the second book. So it's just like for me, it's just all about hustling and, putting as much as you can out there in the world. And so far, it's really paying off.
Fantastic. Okay, so Zibby Owens, who took my class, I think was like 13 or 14 years ago, and I remember you got a piece for $1,000, and ever since then you've become this big book fluencer. And I know you have, I loved your Random House kids book, Princess Charming. You did a novel, Blank. You did Bookends, a memoir, and I loved having a cameo in it. And then this is your third anthology. So you've just launched On Being Jewish, and this one turns into 8 weeks on the USA Today bestseller list. So I know that I have a whole chapter in Book Bible about launching an anthology because it's very, very complicated. And it does seem to me when you launch an anthology, the most important things are a great title, a great concept, you know who your audience is, and great writers. So Zibby, did all those elements just come together on Being Jewish for you?
Yeah, it just happened. I barely had to do anything. No, I'm kidding. It took a lot of work. I really love doing anthologies. The first one I did was by mistake. It was called Moms Don't Have Time To, a quarantine anthology. And it was because during COVID, I asked a bunch of authors who had been on my podcast, previously called Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I just renamed it Totally Booked with Zibby because it's not for moms. Anyway, whatever. But back then I was in the throes of it, and I asked a bunch of the authors who I'd had on the podcast to write an essay, and I was sending it out to my mailing list during COVID as one of many things I was doing to try to help authors through that time and also entertain readers with like an Instagram live show and all the rest, because I sort of have dedicated myself to helping authors when I can and getting great books to great people. And I don't know. So anyway, I had met with a publisher before the pandemic started who was sort of bragging about how they could get a book out in like 2 weeks. And I was like, well, that's great because it's so slow and I really want this book out all the time. So I found that guy's email and emailed him, and it ended up taking 6 months, which is still fast. So that came out right after COVID. Actually, it was still during COVID, and I donated the proceeds of that book to finding a vaccine, just to tell you how long ago that was. And then because while that was going through the publishing, I realized how much I liked doing anthologies, so I decided I would do it on purpose. So the next one was Moms Don't Have Time to Have Kids, which I thought was really funny. And I asked, again, a bunch of authors who had been on my podcast if they would contribute to that. And I had that come out 6 months after the first one. And then I had a break where I didn't do an anthology. I was busy getting rejected myself for trying to sell a memoir and a novel, and kept trying and then logging on and interviewing all these accomplished authors and thinking, okay, well, I guess it's just not going to happen for me. And then it happened that I wrote an essay about trying to get to my kids' back to school night during UN week and having to run through the Central Park Transverse and like having an asthma attack, and anyways, to whatever the things will do for kids. And I sent it around, and it turned out one of the moms in my kids' kindergarten class worked at Gersh, which is a literary agency, and she's like, the guy next door in the next office does literary stuff. Why don't you guys meet? So that guy, Joe Veltri, has been my agent now for the last, well, my daughter's in 5th grade, so for that long. And he helped me sell the other books finally. Again, a lot of rejection. And the way I got the book deal for Bookends, my memoir of love, loss, and literature, after a lot of losses I've gone through and books I've loved and all of that, was getting rejected a lot too. And then I reread the proposal and realized that the essay I had included, like the sample chapter, really wasn't that good. So I begged Joe if I could, I shouldn't even be saying this publicly, but anyway, I begged him to send an email out to the remaining publishers that said, like, moms don't have time to write book proposals, and I promise you I can do a really great job on this memoir, and I can do it. And this one editor wrote back the next day and bought it, and she's been my editor, Carmen Johnson at Little A. We did a memoir together, and then I'd always wanted to write a novel. I mean, always. I had written many that had gotten rejected, and finally I sold one to her, and that came out. That was Blank. And then in the process, I started my own boutique publishing house to help authors even more, since I wanted to try to mix things up and had learned so much from all these other areas. And I opened a bookstore myself in California called Zibby's Bookshop. So after the events of October 7th, and after 9 months of speaking up and, being this accidental activist and just trying to draw attention and to share my stories and having it have no impact, I thought, and also being involved with the new nonprofit I helped start up with 30 other authors, I thought, what if we do an anthology? I know how to do those, and we can donate the proceeds to the nonprofit we started called Artists Against Anti-Semitism. And because I have a publishing house now, I'll just publish it. So we are donating the proceeds of that to the nonprofit, and it came out in time for the anniversary of October 7th. And now it's been on the bestseller list for 8 weeks on the USA Today list.
I think a lot of people don't understand that even if you're just starting out, anthologies are really possible. Like, I know people that have gotten, like their first bestseller. And what's great about an anthology is it's such a group project because you get to work with other authors. So I think it's so exciting in a way that you help so many people, and it's so much fun to do that. So so congratulations on being Jewish. Okay, Dr. Kane, Panic Proof, the new holistic solution to end your anxiety forever. Well, I always say, to write a self-help book, it seems like you want to figure out what's your superpower that you could help, that you're the only one in the world that could help people fix this thing, and you need a platform. And so you have the perfect platform, because it says here, you have a degree in clinical psychology, training in EMDR, and a license as a naturopathic physician in the state of Arizona. So it seems like you took all of your platform and the one thing that you know how to do based on your own experience with anxiety. And it seems like you came up with like the proposal was almost like a plan to help people get rid of their anxiety, right?
Yeah, exactly. And one of the great things about social media is it kind of forces you to create the TLDR, or the too long didn't read. And that's really valuable in pitching a book and trying to convey a message. They're like, you have 30 seconds. What's your elevator pitch? If you distill down the message that you're trying to convey, is that, for me, it was, you can become panic proof, which is the problem and the solution in a 2-word alliteration. And that was really appealing. And so the publisher immediately understood it. My agents really immediately understood it. And so that was helpful. And being in your classes, Sue, is really helpful. I think that relationships be algorithms. And so having the connection with Sue and the other amazing writers and students that were in these classes, and then writing some bylines and doing podcasts, and then ultimately that personal connection is how I met Wendy at Wendy Sherman Agency, and she and Laura now represent me. And so it was absolutely incredible. So if you're trying to figure out, I love what you said, Sue, is hang out with the people you want to be. And so all y'all are on this call tonight because you want to publish a book. And so hang out with the people that you admire that are publishing and who are writing. And you just never know, kind of like what you were saying, Zibby, is that there may be someone who knows someone that might really vibe with what you're trying to create. So I took the byline class, I took the book class, and got together with Wendy, really finessed my Instagram, loved connecting with people on podcasting. And so now Panic Proof, it's my first book, and we've sold in, I think, 9 countries, 9 different languages. And it's been just an absolute joy. We've gotten to do Tamron Hall. I've been published by Huffington Post, Oprah Daily, Vogue. And a lot of it is having that distilled message, having the backing to say, I know this will work, and here are the steps. That's like everything. And just being excited about it. You can tell probably I'm excited.
Yeah, and you had such a perfect platform for self-help.
Yeah.
And by the way, I have a lot of students who've started out doing memoirs or essay collections that don't sell because it's such a hard market. But if they're a doctor or a therapist or a teacher or a coach, sometimes that using that platform, you could still tell your first person story, which you did, but then you help people. So I think that platform was great. Now, Robert, interestingly, you started out in my class. I remember you wrote a couple great pieces for the New York Times, nonfiction, about how you couldn't wait to quit your law job that you didn't like, and you became you entertained at children's parties. And then interestingly, you took the nonfiction story and you made it into a novel. So how did you decide to take a real life story and then make it into fiction?
Well, I did get a lot of, encouragement from those 2 New York Times essays that I published while I was under your tutelage, and it gave me a lot of confidence because I realized that one of those I had about 500 comments, reader comments, and people were sort of up in arms. Some people were like, how could you leave such a responsible job and do something that you're not going to make any money at? And other people were like, oh, I've always wanted to do what you did. So I realized I had something going there, and that was exciting. And it gave me confidence. And I never would have gotten those essays published in the Times if I hadn't been in your class. I'm quite convinced of that. But then I realized once I got down to, and I also want to mention that I was writing about something else when I went into your class. And the first day I was there, you asked me like 3 questions. It all took about 15 seconds. And then you said, this is what you should write about. Your career changed from, and it was like, boom. And I was terrified anyway, because everybody around me I thought was much more accomplished than I was. But I was like, okay, I'll write about that. So it worked. And then, but once I started to write about it in a memoir form, I realized that that I was better off writing autobiographical fiction. And although I will say that autobiographical fiction is a really hard sell, so it was lucky that I knew. I know Zibby mentioned that she had a connection, and I never liked that saying that it's not what you know, but who you know. But I did meet at a book party Naomi Rosenblatt, who is the publisher of Heliotrope. And I think that helped me a lot because she knew me, and I guess she liked me, and she knew I wasn't crazy. I think publishers don't want to work with people who are nuts, and she knew that at least I wasn't nuts. So I think all of that helped.
Cool. Now, Trip, I always say to people, write about what you're most obsessed with. And I remember in class, you had a funny story about how you had a broken family and you got obsessed with certain television shows like The Partridge Family and a couple of the what was the other one? What was the other TV show about a family that you loved?
I guess I loved all of them. I mean, I loved TV growing up as a kid. I didn't really have a broken family, but I just always loved pop culture as a kid. And
Think about those. There was about 4 or 5 family shows that you got obsessed with. I remember you started writing about that. And then what I think a lot of people don't know is that biography is actually a really good place to start sometimes. So you've written a couple biographies and now it's Norman Lear. Could you talk about a little bit, like, if you want to do a biography, if you're going to do a proposal, do you do research and do you look and see what other books have been written and do you come up with a thesis about, this person hasn't been covered or I have some new angle on it?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you definitely have to come up with a new angle on something, for it to be fresh. In this particular case with the Norman Lear biography, I mean, this is just a very roundabout way thing. As Sue said, I wanted to write about pop culture as a kid all my life when I wanted to be a writer, and took your fabulous class at the New School, which sort of, I say, splits on the light for me. And I was able to publish a lot of other books because of the class and because of the writing credits I got at places like the Post and the Daily News and things like that, which led to my last book on the Improv Comedy Club. And that led to me being able to teach a class on history of stand-up comedy at Emerson College in Boston, where I went to college. Um, and then teaching a class on Norman Lear, where he went to Emerson, and we have a scholarship in his name, and I pitched a class to them on that. And that is actually how this particular book came about, because my terrific agent, a guy named Peter Ruby, without getting too much into my story, told them about this class, and they were interested in having me do a biography on him. And I had actually never done a biography before, so it was like very much trial by fire. But by damned, I learned how to do it, and I figured it out. I read a lot of great biographers, people whose work I really admire, that to use as a template, and they actually almost did not change a word. So it was amazing, and it's been a very exciting thing.
Congratulations. Now, the second question I want to ask you all is, what do you wish you would have known sooner about book publishing? And I'll tell you what I wish I would have known, because I moved to New York at age 20 to be a writer, and my first book didn't really come out until I was 43. And the secret that helped me was that I was jealous of two friends that got really big book deals in fiction and nonfiction, and I was complaining to my shrink that I had tried to sell a book for 7 years and had no luck. And he said, well, go take them out to lunch or dinner and see if you could pick their brain, hang out with people you want to be, ask them. And I did. And the first friend, Larry, who sold a big nonfiction book, at lunch, he said, well, I'll tell you a trick. After I did my proposal, I hired this great ghost editor named Sally, and I paid her to kick it into shape. She worked a Doubleday before, and that was the secret. So don't tell anyone, but here's her number. And then I went out with my friend Yona, who had sold a big novel, and asked her opinion, and she said, okay, don't tell anyone, but I use this great ghost editor named Sally, who kicked my novel into shape. So I wound up using this ghost editor, and she helped me sell. I worked with her, hired her separately, paid her separately. She wound up helping me sell my first memoir, 5 Men Who Broke My Heart, to Random House, and then my first novel in a 2-book deal to St. Martin's. And I never knew that one could hire a ghost editor. So I had taken classes, I had mentors, I had writing group, but I didn't know that if you're having trouble, you don't know what you're doing, you can actually hire a professional to help kick it into shape. And that really made a huge difference for me. And if anybody wants to email me, there's certain ghost editors who are usually former editors or book agents who know the market, who really help me. So is there anything that you wish you would have understood sooner, Jody? So when you're working on your essay collection, what do you wish you might have known sooner about how to do that?
I wish I would have known that writing the book is only part of the job, that there's so much that writers have to do in terms of publicizing the book. And, I thought, oh, I've got a book deal with Harper Perennial. Harper Collins is, they got it covered. They got, do the thing. And then 2 months before my book came out, I was like, oh, wait, so I have to do more? Okay, wait, so you want me to do, oh, so I have to plan my own event. Oh, so that's how this works. So I wish I would have known that earlier, because I would have spent more time doing that and being more strategic. Because 2 months before my book deal came out, I was working full time. I just started an MFA program. I was busy. I didn't have time to be a publicist. So I wish I would have known sooner that there's a lot that authors have to do to get books launched.
It's a great point. And by the way, one of the things I learned the hard way was that you can't control publicity, even if you have good publicity people. So for example, for my last book, Forgiveness Store, I have literally written 50 short pieces, companion pieces and I just say to myself, I'm getting paid to write my own book publicity. But you don't have control over much else. So that's a great point. Orlando, what do you wish you would have known sooner about book publishing, about kids' books, anything?
I think I would have. It's definitely a process that once you get the book deal and once you get an agent, it's a lot of just not hearing from anyone for a very long time. And so I'm someone that always loves to, I have email notifications on and I'm always checking my emails. So that was something that I had to learn was just patience. And once you get those emails, they're very big and things start to happen once you get those emails, but it's a lot of time in between.
Yeah, and it's a really slow process. I mean, I once finished a book and I was so excited and it was completed. The book was completed. It wasn't going to come out for 2 years. And coming from journalism, you're right, it's so slow. So that's a great point. It's Lena, is there anything that you wish you would have known? And I know you were doing short journalistic pieces for many years. Do you wish you would have understood that that could have led to books faster?
Actually, no. What I really wish I would have done sooner is switch to journalism sooner, because years ago, I had a job that had nothing to do with writing or journalism or anything. It paid really well. It had great benefits. It was very well respected, and I hated every day of it, every day and every moment of it. But I had a family, I had kids, and I had all these responsibilities, and I couldn't I couldn't possibly quit it until I could just no longer tolerate it. I just wish I did it 10 years sooner. So
Inter-
that's my only regret.
Good, so go for your dream faster. That's
Yeah,
great.
faster. Yeah, don't wait.
Yeah,
Don't wait.
Banning, what do you wish that you would have known sooner?
Um, and it's going to sound sort of cynical to say this, but I had written a trauma memoir and really spent 5 years putting my heart and soul into my book, and I really had this sort of vision that it would move people so deeply that they would just rush forward and help me. And the bottom line is nobody really cares about your story. It's a business, um and nobody's going to help you out of the kindness of their heart. And so you better absolutely love the hell out of your story in writing, because it's going to be a soul wrenching experience, especially if you're writing a trauma memoir. The process of getting an agent, the process of going through publishing, submission, everything else is filled with absolute terror and fear and heartbreak and a lot of rejection. And so go into it with a lot of tenacity and preparation, not just your book and the writing process itself, but that once you begin the journey of publishing, the hardship has just begun.
But totally worth it. Come on, I saw you.
Absolutely.
You were pretty happy.
but I mean, here we are, the successful few. I mean, we are the 1%. So there's this beauty pageant behind me filled with the bodies of people who have not been able to get their books published. It's a heartbreaking industry, and so there's no guarantee of success.
I have students that have sold 700 books in the last decade. So I think there's all kinds of, by the way, some people here have small publishers, indie publishers, they're self-publishing. So there are a lot of different options. So yes,
sure,
the amount of people that could get a six-figure deal from Random House, that might be small. But
sure.
when I've had, with a lot of therapy and help, I've had books that I sold to tiny little presses just to like see it in print. So,
well, and that's, I think, ultimately my point is that don't write for the hope of success. Write because you love writing and you believe in your story. That right there is going to be, that's 95% of the chance of success, because people can read that stuff on the page. They can smell
that
it.
I agree with. I once wrote a piece that said, when you're thinking of a book, if you would write it for free anyway, that's a good book to choose.
Absolutely.
Writing it to make a lot of money, I would
Absolutely.
say that's, just because you can't control it and it
Crucial.
does take longer. Right.
Yep.
Okay, Michelle, what do you wish you would have understood sooner about the whole book publishing world?
Well, I absolutely agree with what I just heard. I think, most writers spend so much time alone focusing on, perfecting the craft and don't realize how much of it is actually getting out there, speaking very publicly about it, social media, TV, radio shows, podcasts, etc. But, going back to what Orlando was saying, there is a lot of time in between. And, me as a first-time writer, I didn't really expect it that much. And there are some things you can do to prepare. And of course, once you go through your first book, you kind of know the deal for the next book. But, I think some of the things that I wish that I'd done before was, going to more bookstore events, knowing what the bookstores were actually picking up, meeting a lot of other, writers and people, in your community, who could potentially help you, and you could help as well. And I think the other thing too is just reading a lot of publications, getting to know them so well that you know each of their columns and where you're going to pitch to, because eventually, once your book is out, you'll want to feature it in a specific publications, and knowing that, having that knowledge beforehand, and going into that is really helpful, because after the book is created, you're sort of dissecting it in different pieces, trying to figure out, well, how can I get the message out there in as many ways as possible?
Great. Raj, what do you wish you would have known a little sooner?
I think there's this misconception that if you publish this one book on a major, that your life is going to change and it's going to be this big shift in your life. And I think it's just not true. I think if you want to have longevity as a writer, you have to keep actively publishing, essays and journalism and poetry and whatever your medium is. You have to stay active on social media if that's your thing. You have to just constantly keep yourself out there. When I put my first book out on an indie, I knew that it wasn't going to be some sort of runaway hit, but I knew that it would establish me as an author. I had already written a lot of essays, but now in the world of books, it's much different. So it did that, and the book has won 2 awards, and it's kind of given me that foundation to build upon. So the second book now is already getting a lot of love, and I am now ready to kind of take the next step on the third book, which I think is going to have a lot more commercial appeal. So I think, like, as a writer, you have to ask yourself, what do you want? Do you want to just put one book out and you're happy with that? Or do you want to kind of have this incline over time? And that's something also I learned from your career as well, Sue, and your stories.
Good. Yeah, my attitude was like, publish anything that anyone will buy really quickly, and then 20 years later say, what the fuck did I do that? I should have had like a better plan. But, it was like journalism. It's so exciting when it happens that I didn't have like any kind of master plan. In fact, I flooded the market. Anyway, Zibby, what do you wish you would have known sooner? Now that you're a best-selling author with books.
So much. I could fill like 16 hours with all the things. I didn't know anything, and I've learned so much. One is the difference between writing a book that people want versus a book that people need. I have spent a lot of time trying to convince people that they need my novel, but really, do they? I mean, they don't. There's so many novels. There's so many memoirs. There's so much of everything. And it's hard to break out. And we all have such limited time. So why our books? Why? And I think that when you have a really compelling why, it makes all the difference, and a targeted audience. I mean, I think one mistake, sorry, my son is like doing tutoring behind me, but one of the misconceptions is that if you target a group, you're leaving everybody out, because really, shouldn't you be targeting everybody and making it a mega bestseller? But actually, the more specific you can be, the better in book publishing land, as long as you're not targeting like, people who love ring lights. Although actually, that wouldn't be such a bad book. Anyway, never mind. But the point is, find an audience, do something that is worthwhile, something you believe in, and that speaks to the market in a way that it fills a need. Just in the same way that when you're launching a product, a cereal or something else, like, why this? How is this different? What are we saying? What is the benefit? So
Yeah, I
anyway.
agree with you. Yeah, and even in my classes, someone will come up with an idea, and I'm like, who's your audience? And it didn't even occur to them, who's your audience? And so sometimes we talk about, wait a second, you're 62 years old. There's 22 publications that care about people of that age. Is that where it's for? You're in New York. Is it a New York audience? You're Irish. Is it the Irish Times? Like, you're a parent. Is it a parenting piece? So I really think that's so smart to think about who your audience is.
And by the way, Sue, I took your class in 2005. So this has been kind of a long
wow,
road.
that long
Yeah.
ago. Okay,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, that was amazing.
I've
Okay,
been
Nicole.
married twice since then. Anyway.
I know that because at the beginning you were when I first met you, Zibby Schwartzman, and then when I went to look up your email, you were Zibby Wright, and then I couldn't find you, and then all of a sudden Zibby Owens, you were New York Magazine is like the new Oprah, Zibby Owens, and I thought I only know one Zibby in the world, so that's how I figured it
And
out.
you can read all about those changes in
That's what
Bookends,
I
a memoir of love,
Yeah,
loss, and
the
literature.
memoir and the novel. That's great. Nicole,
Susan?
yes,
Okay.
question,
What I
Nicole.
wish I would have known is that it's a hurry up and wait, hurry up and wait. And so for me, I found myself like getting this like adrenaline, like finish the things, make the deadline. You need to know within an hour. And then it was radio silence for days. And I found that I was going into this emotional seesaw. And so what I wish that I would have done is just been like, so you say this in our Facebook group, like Nicole, just take a chill pill and it's going to be a slow burn. There are going to be moments when you're going to need to be able to respond quickly, but just like be present. It will happen. Just keep on moving forward.
Fantastic. And Robert, what do you wish you would have known?
Well, actually, I'm really glad that I didn't know what I learned eventually. And what I learned eventually is that it's really hard to publish autobiographical fiction. So I think if I had known that, I may not have worked as hard as I worked for years on the book, and I may not have given all the effort I did to sell it. So I'm actually glad I didn't know all that because it helped me have faith to keep on working and keep on trying to sell it. That's my response.
Cool. Trip.
Well, I would like to say the short answer is everything. I mean, when I started out wanting to write as a teenager, the first thing I ever wanted to write was a book on All in the Family, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I was able to get the attention of a couple of agents and go over the transient when you could still get someone's name on a Writer's Digest 20 years ago, or 30, 40 years ago, and I didn't know what I was doing. Same thing when I first, moved to New York right after college, thinking I was, after having a degree in journalism from Emerson College, thinking I was going to get a big deal with Vanity Fair as a writer at large and Esquire and big deal at Random House. I did not know what I was doing. And I had the fantastic fortune of taking your class 5 times. I say that you are my guiding light that really helped turn on the light for me. And I learned so much from you. You whipped me into shape. You got that muscle into shape, and I got so much work and so many things because of that. Not only that, but I just felt a real kindred spirit because we both come from medical families. We fathers and families who have long lines of physicians. So I felt I had that in common with you too. And I've also been lucky, not only to have that, having you in my life for 30 plus years now, but also an incredible literary agent that I finally found. An incredible guy by the name of Peter Ruby, who was stuck with me after the agent before him was an agent with a very big, what you call a super agent in New York, Al Zuckerman with Writers House, who was a very famous literary agency in New York with many big writers. He could not sell the All in the Family book either. For what was really not a good proposal, looking back, because I still didn't have all the skills that I needed. And fortunately, he hooked me up with my current agent, this wonderful guy, Peter Ruby, and who has stuck with me through thick and thin for 25 plus years now, really believed in me. So, I mean, I think long answers and short answers, everything I learned, I didn't know anything about it. And I've learned so much, continue to learn so much.
Okay, I have 2 more questions for you guys. First question is, what's the best advice that you could give someone? Because we really want to inspire people. And as Banning said, it is a tough market out there. We really want to inspire people the beginning of the year. And tough as it is, we all did it, right? I mean, I remember I used to go to my shrink and I used to say, why can't I do it? And I used to like talk about people who were doing it that I knew. And he would say, well, what are they doing that you're not? Are they working harder? And we really analyzed, what am I missing here? And so, and by the way, there was a lot of stuff I was missing. And by talking to people, by asking advice from really smart, kind people, I figured it out. So Jody, what's the best advice if you know somebody who wants to do an essay collection in this tough market? What advice would you give them?
I would tell them to publish essays because that's one, going to build a platform, which is something that agents will always ask about, but it's also going to let you know whether you actually want to write a whole book on a particular topic or whether you want to tweak it in some way, and it'll also familiarize you with your own style and help you find your voice, and also builds community with other writers and be a good literary citizen as well.
A good literary citizen, that's a great one. I love that. And by the way, you guys already are, because you're, everybody that's here, you're supporting these authors. By the way, buy their books, follow them on social media. If you love the books, review it on Amazon, Goodreads, barnesandnoble.com. So that's a great one. Be a good literary citizen. Orlando, I know you're already helping a couple people in the class who want to do picture books. So what's your best
Mhm.
advice? I think if I remember, when you wanted to do your picture book, you went out and read a whole bunch of them to understand that it's only 700 words. You don't do the drawings. You came up with a great title. What else would you advise somebody?
Exactly that. That was what helped me from the very beginning. I went to I looked to see like what was coming out, what was out currently by Latinx authors, and for picture books and children's books, and to see what was getting released, what publishers were buying, and that's what really helped me and also inspired me with seeing how many like Mexican American Latinx authors are out there. So go out
Good.
and see what's getting published in kind of like your niche and what you want to write.
Cool. And Banning, what advice would you give to somebody? I mean, by the way, that Washington Post piece was amazing. So do you agree with my advice that sometimes if you write a short piece, that could be a shortcut sometimes to getting a book deal?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that was crucial advice. And I think that honestly, if I had any advice other than that very practical piece of advice, it would be to believe in your ability and yourself. Physically, it's really not that hard to write a book. You'd be shocked. In fact, by the time you've written your book, you're going to realize I have too much, and you're going to need to go back and cut, and that's much harder. So, I think ultimately, for example, look at me. I had 90 followers on Twitter. I wound up getting a book deal with Maria Shriver, like a 6-figure advance. You can do it. You absolutely can do it. If I can do it, you can do it. It really is a matter of believing in yourself and absolutely loving what you're writing. You have to believe in what you're writing. And I'll say it again. I mentioned it earlier. If you love and believe in what you're writing, it's going to make your writing better. People can read that on the page. It just shows up. So I absolutely, I don't, the faceless people that are sitting there watching the Zoom, I'm telling you right now, you absolutely can write a book and get it published. I promise.
Right. And what's so cool, by the way, about starting with a short piece, I always say to people is it's a billion times easier to sell 3 pages than it is 300 pages. And once you sell the short piece, a lot of times you see, oh, this is how it works. An editor gets it. This is my audience. This is how they titled it. This is a subtitle. So I do think that could help. Lena, what kind of advice do you give to someone who wants to write? You do scientific research in both of your books. So if somebody wants to write a book like that, what advice do you give them?
Well, I would say my best advice is never give up. I came to this country as a first generation immigrant in my 20s, and I did not speak English. When I told people I want to be a writer, they laughed in my face, and nobody believed me that I would ever make it, because they said it's scientifically impossible. You don't become bilingual so late in life, and I proved them all wrong. It was actually a little bit easy to break in doing science, because science is hard to write about. It was just an easy field to break in, and now once I'm in, I can write about any other subject that I want. In fact, I'm working on my novel, and so I'm gonna second Bannings on that, and I'm gonna say everybody who is listening to this talk right now, yes, you can write a book, more than one book. Just never give up.
Cool. And David just mentioned to me that there's a lot of questions in the chat. So if anybody feels like it, not only should you check the chat, if anybody wants to share your social media or share an email or share how people can get in touch with you, any of the panelists, put it in. So you don't have to, but if you want to, put it in the chat. Okay, Michelle, what advice do you give?
My advice is do not let having no existing platform stop you from actually going after pitching your amazing idea and going after a book deal. I think that actually deters a lot of people from, trying. If I can do it, just like Banning was saying, if I can do it, you can do it too. I think I was really transparent in the acquisition meetings about not having published before, not having a platform. I just came literally with my travel sketches, my ideas, and my book proposal, which had my sample writing. And, I think going back to what you were saying, Sue, it does touch upon three topics, which is unusual. And, I was just looking at a question in the chat. One of the things that I think differentiated myself when I was pitching is that I was intersecting at different places because I had lived in Asia for almost 2 decades and counting. And, I just started one day deciding to travel and learn a little bit more about food as medicine and just really interviewing and taking a look deeper into these fascinating cultures and then starting to write about it, to draw about it. And then eventually it became a book. And it became a book that was at three intersections: environmental activism, health and wellness, and about my time in Asia. And the other thing that I would say, in terms of if you don't have, the traditional platform to talk about, I think the editors and the agents actually appreciate if you are able to demonstrate some type of entrepreneurial spirit, even if you're not an entrepreneur, because at some point after the book creation, you're going to be having to think of a lot of different ways to get your book out there to different bookstores, different platforms. And if you have some type of media training, media background, you've actually spoken, on podcasts for whatever reason, or, even being representative on a radio show, that actually does count for a platform, even if you don't have a social media following. So it all counts. It all goes into the book proposal. You find every single possible way to differentiate yourself. I'm an Asian woman, American that lived in Asia for almost 2 decades. That was part of the differentiation. So you're literally just canvassing everything you have and, you're bringing it forth into your proposal and into your meetings. So don't let not having a social media platform, stop you from going after a book
I
deal.
was never a joiner. I never wanted to join anything. And when I started figuring out book deals, I joined every single organization I could possibly think of, for women, for people my age, all my alumni associations, because the more connections you have, the better it is. So that's good advice. Raj, what advice? So you've now, aside from a lot of short pieces, you've done the memoir with Fordham University Press, and now you just launched a middle grade novel. So what advice do you give to people that are interested in doing similar books?
Oh, I mean, I totally agree with Banning and Lena about loving yourself and believing in your work. And I mean, that's so crucial. And also surrounding yourself around people who also believe in you. I think that's really important, whether it's just, even if it's like your mom, your spouse, your partner, your friend, that kind of encouragement really goes a long way. I know it's something we already know, but it's so true. And like having someone like Sue, someone who can give you feedback and be supportive as well, that's crucial. I agree with Michelle. I'm actually not on social media, but because of all the constant essays I write, it's landed me on a lot of podcasts and TV shows and interviews, and like I've established my voice in that form, and I send emails out. So yeah, you don't have to. There's so many different ways. There's no blueprint to this business. It's really however you feel like shaping and crafting your life and your career.
Good. And Zibby, someone had mentioned, I think Jody had mentioned, be a good literary citizen. And I do think that the fact that you have this amazing podcast and that you've helped so many authors, I definitely feel like you, not to take away from your talent and drive, but I do think you have great karma. And I feel like I benefited from having great karma, helping other writers and being supportive. Is that something that you would recommend that other people do? The writers?
I mean, if you're doing it to sell a book, then no. I mean, you should do it because you want to do it and you're doing it from the heart, because it's very obvious when it's not. And there are authors who had book columns, and then as soon as they got like their second book, they never wrote a column again. Like, it's if it feels transactional and that's the only reason you're doing it, I would say find something else that you really believe in. I think being authentic and your true self is the most important thing, because once you're out there and people get to know you, they'll find out if you were faking, and then they won't appreciate that. Like, you have to just be who you are. That sounds so obvious. So, of course, though, I would say, well, maybe I shouldn't say that. It's always nice to help authors. But all I'm saying is don't do it as a means to an end. Do it because it's the right thing to do and because you're a nice person. And then, yes, then you should do it. But don't do it because you're trying to get something out of it.
Robert, what advice do you give? What advice do you give somebody who wants to, take something autobiographical, write a novel? It's really hard to do,
Well,
especially at an age, and you just did it.
Banning is a perfect example. I mean, he wrote one friggin' essay, and it evolved into a book deal with Maria Shriver. I know another student of Susan Shapiro, a woman named Aspen Mattis, who wrote one essay in the New York Times. It turned into a memoir, and she's had a pretty interesting literary career after that. I think that's very important. And then what everybody has been saying, this love thing, is huge. I write a blog, and I did post it. It's at markowitz.substack.com, and it's something that I love. It's about the kind of spirituality that Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, Course in Miracles, and I write it like 3 times a week, and I do it because I love it. I've been doing it for a year and a half, and it's a 1-minute read, and I just do it for myself. And yes, the subscription, I've gotten subscribers and stuff, but I would definitely do this if I had no subscribers, because it helps me grow. So I think, and I'm not even necessarily a nice person. I just love it. So anyway.
Good. Trip, what kind of advice do you give, especially people that want to write about pop culture and biography?
Well, first of all, the business has never been tougher, and it's just going to get tougher and tougher. But that being said, you have to follow your bliss if that's what you want to do. And this has always been my bliss, and it's like I can't think of anything else I would ever want to do. And it's been such a rewarding career. Learn the market, study, always strive to become a better writer. Read books that you're crazy about. Try to befriend writers who are in your genre. Read what they do. Get in touch with them, and continue to take great classes where you can make, great connections, including your class, which I'd love to take your class again, just because I want to get back. Now that this book is out, I'm creating some bylines and trying to meet some new contacts there. And I know I need to sharpen my pencil there. And it's very important. You can never know enough, and just study, and get better and better and better. Because the business is never been harder, and it's not going to get easier.
Yeah,
And that's unfortunate.
Next question, which is, what do you guys have upcoming that we should know about, whether it's buying your book or following you on social media, or does anyone have any events? And I was just going to say, I have a bunch of, I have an online class starting tomorrow, the pitch class. I have a sell your book class. And also I'm going to do another panel later in the month, which has 5 top literary agents and book editors coming online. So if anybody emails me, propsu123@gmail.com, you can email me questions and I could tell you what's going on. So I want to hear, what else do you have going on right now? So Jody, are you doing any more events for your book? Are you working on a new book?
I am going to be reading with the reading series Must Love Memoir on February 11th. Follow me on IG at Jody M. Savage to keep up with what I'm doing.
Well, and if anybody wants to include your social media or any classes or any events you have coming up, put it in the chat now. Nicole, what do you have coming up?
Right now we're on book tour, so just lots of podcasts. And so find me on Instagram at Dr. Nicole Kane and see the adventures.
Fantastic. Lena.
So I am having an event later this month in Boston with an editor of Boston Globe at Porter Square Bookstore. I'll post the link. It's actually super exciting because my book kind of talks about things that are of interest to that biomedical community at MIT and Cambridge. And My agent and I are talking about a possible memoir. She really wants me to write a memoir because she thinks I have enough for a memoir and then some. And I'm being a little bit sheepish because I don't want this to sound like an encyclopedia, and I'm still figuring out the angle, but I think with some work we'll nail it.
Cool. Let's see, Orlando.
I'll be at the San Antonio Book Festival in April, and then we're also later in the year gonna have the bilingual edition of The Last Somali out, which is very exciting. It'll be Spanish and English.
Cool. Banning. Do you have a paperback version coming out, Banning?
No, the Open Field only publishes hardcover. There's no paperback.
Are you still doing
And
events?
pardon me?
Still going to do events?
I'm still doing some events. I've got several podcast invites coming up, so I'm going to be scheduling those soon. You can always find me at banninglion.com or Banning Writes, BANNINGWRITES at Instagram. Not super active on social media, but if you send me a message, I tend to take a few days to respond.
Great. Michelle, what are you going to do for your launch?
It's split between across US and Hong Kong, which is very interesting. So I have corporations and also lots of different types of events and events that I'm co-partnering with like 2 or 3 organizations, which is going to be really fun. So there's going to be that. And then also there's sequence timing for German, Spanish, and Italian editions, and then the paperback versions for each of them. And that's been super fun because with each of them, I'm sort of, having discussions on how the book is going to be received in each of the different markets. So there's been some small decisions that have been made for each of the versions, which has been really fun.
Great. Raj, what do you got coming up?
I'm currently working on a manuscript for a young adult novel, which I'm really excited about. It also has themes of identity, socially conscious issues, things that I'm really passionate about. I did finally sign with an agent after all these years, so I'm really excited. They're excited. I'm excited. And then I'm still touring a lot. I'll be at Texas Library Association this spring. I'll be in Chicago, Sacramento. I'm doing the North Miami Library Literacy Fair for all the kids in Miami. So I'm buzzing around. So anybody can write me anytime.
Fantastic. Zibby, what can we go to? Do you have online events or in-person events?
My next event is bedtime for the kids, so I'm gonna have to do that. I am still doing lots of touring events for On Being Jewish now. I'm going to lots of cities all around the country and a lot of New York events and LA events and panels and conferences, and you can find it all at my Substack, zibbyowens.com. I figured out you can redirect Substacks, by the way, to just your name. That took me half of the holiday break. But anyway, so go to zibbyowens.com and you can find all of my upcoming events. And in terms of my books, my daughter and I are writing a graphic novel together, and we have worked with an illustrator and have the first 74 pages colored and done, and I'm going to send it out. My agent's going to send it out this week to publishers. So if anybody has a publisher they know that might be interested, let me know.
Robert.
Yeah, first of all, I want to thank a whole bunch of people who have just subscribed to my free Substack. It's called Shine, and it's a spiritual, and it's, if you like people like Eckhart Tolle, Byron Katie, Michael Singer, Course in Miracles, markowitz.substack.com. Also, if you're in the New York area, I have written a musical based on my novel Clown Shoes, and the first performance of it is going to be at Rye Library in Rye, New York, and that's on January 21st at 6:00 p.m. So come to Rye Library, January 21st, 6 p.m. Hear me sing along with a very talented woman who I'm working with. Thank you.
Cool. Trip, what do you got coming up?
Yes. I'm in LA for the week. I've got a signing coming up Wednesday night at Book Soup in West Hollywood. that is going to be moderated by my good friend Jeff Abraham, who is a top show business historian out here. Has also done the PR for my book. I've got some events coming up in New York soon, which you're going to be moderating. We've been talking about that today. One at the National Arts Club, which someone said yes to today. Trying to set up and I'm looking forward to some other stuff in Boston, hopefully, as well. And while I'm out in LA, I'm trying to set up the checkerboard, as they say, for a new biography I want to write that I can't talk about yet, but I'm trying to develop some sources while I'm out here. I start back to school at Emerson College next week teaching, and I'm going to be, trying to pursue some other classes there as well as my MFA. And I also want to start getting some new bylines. So hence I want to take your class again so I can get that pencil sharpened. But this has been so much fun.
Well, David, do I have time to ask everybody one more question? Yeah, you're right. You have to unmute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, it's fine with me. I mean,
All right, one more quick question, which
Wait,
is
can you ask me first because I have to go.
want to be really inspiring. So what was the most exciting moment of your life when it comes to books? Like, was it when you got the yes? Was it seeing your book in print? Was it the first event? Zibby, what's been the most exciting thing so far?
It was finally selling a memoir I had been trying to sell for almost 20 years and like running into my husband's office when he was on a Zoom and being like, I did it. I did it. Oh my God, it was so exciting. Anyway, I'll just leave you with that. Thank you all for listening.
Yeah,
Bye.
thank
Thank you so much.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Michelle, what's been the most exciting moment so far? Was it when they said yes to your book?
I remember getting the news on the subway that my book was being auctioned all over the world and my hands were shaking. I just couldn't believe it. So, kind of going back to what everybody was saying, you need to believe in yourself because you feel like such a small person in this big industry with these bigger players, these celebrities that, might be getting book deals, but you can do it. So I was really happy that day, and I'm really happy to, talk to anybody about my experience too after.
Fantastic. Lena, what was the best moment?
So my best moment was the day when my agent showed up. Well, she wasn't my agent yet. We used to get together when we were working on my first book proposal. We used to get together for coffee because we both live in Queens, and it was just really informal chat. She would give me some, suggestions. She would show me other proposals that she bought when she was an acquisitions editor. It was basically a friendship. So it was another coffee meeting, and I come there thinking she's going to give me some more pointers or whatnot. She whips out a contract and puts it on the table and says, here, go sign it. And I sign it, and then I would literally went dancing home, dancing and singing on the street, and people probably thought I was.
Great. Orlando, what was the most exciting? Was it seeing it, like having it, or you came to New York with all your old buddies, to celebrate? What was the most exciting moment?
It was all that, but also the day the book came out, I went to a independent bookstore that I always had gone to growing up, and they had put it in the window, and it was just there on the window with all the other new releases. With not I never went up to them before and was like, "Oh, I'm publishing a book." It was just there, and the window, and that was such a dream come true. And it really hit that, wow, this book is out. It was very special.
Fantastic. Jody, what was your best moment?
Getting the book deal and realizing a normal, regular person like me can get a book deal, but also having readers come up to me and tell me how much my book meant to them, and seeing what kind of impact it has on others is really exciting.
Nicole, what was your best moment?
Yeah, that was my best moment. Like you said, Jody, is I got a text from somebody who had read my book, and they're a veteran, and they were on the brink of their exit strategy, just riddled with just severe, debilitating symptoms. And the book changed their life. And it was that, that's it. Like, if nobody else buys the book, that's it. That's worth it.
Whoa, Banning.
I would really split it between three things, but I'm going to have to ride their coattails on that one. The first was getting an agent, because I knew that was absolutely, statistically speaking, the hardest part of going to be the hardest part of my journey. Not to mention my agent, Meg Thompson, who is absolutely just one of the best agents in the world, and just love her to pieces. The second was the day she called me. I actually thought she was going to fire me. Agents can fire clients, and I thought she was going to fire me because I'm a nobody. And she asked me, do you know who Maria Shriver is? And she told me Maria Shriver wanted to buy my manuscript for her imprint, which is a very, very prestigious imprint. And then absolutely the letters from people. I mean, I've gotten hundreds of letters, and they never get old. That's why I wrote the book. I wanted to help people, and so yeah, and
Awesome.
my book will always be out there for people to read. So,
Raj, what was your amazing moment so far?
I've had a lot of amazing moments. The most recent one actually that stuck with me was the book was taught. The book was chosen as a fall semester pick for 275 students at a college in New York. So I got to meet the students, and they read it, and I was like seeing them write little notes in the margin, put stickers in the book, and all wait online for me to sign it. That was incredible. And these were all children who were immigrants and first generation immigrants. So that was so meaningful. And then also for the All Mixed Up that just came out, seeing it on the New York Public Library's Best 2024 was unbelievable because I grew up going to libraries and it was my sanctuary. So unreal. Yeah.
Robert, what was your best moment with the book?
Well, the launch party was amazing. Heliotrope's a small publisher, so I threw it. And I had it catered, and about 50 people showed up, including Naomi, my publisher, and friends from pretty far away from a bunch of different states. And we sold a lot of books, and it kind of had the feel of that old TV show, like, This Is Your Life, Robert.
Fantastic. Trip, what's been the best moment so far with all your books?
Well, given my history with Norman Lear and how long I wanted to just finally seeing this thing come to fruition has been a huge, huge, sense of accomplishment and terrific gratitude to so many people who have been involved. And the publicity it's gotten has been incredible. And I've been very fortunate to be working with an excellent publicist out here in LA who specializes in comedy and pop culture. And if anyone's ever doing this kind of book, you've got to hire this guy named Jeff Abraham, who's just been a workhorse. And I'm just very grateful to have him in my life. So
again, I wanted to thank all the panelists. Congratulations on your books, and all the people in the audience. Please buy their books, review them if you like them on Amazon, Goodreads, and barnesandnoble.com, which is free. Follow us on social media, which is really exciting. And as we talked about, as Jody mentioned, be a good literary citizen. And I especially wanted to thank Jennifer Cable and David Levine for sponsoring this today. And if anybody has any questions, I'm at propsu123@gmail.com. And I've written about quitting all my other addictions. So now I'm addicted to email. So I promise I'll be up at 3 in the morning answering all your emails. And my favorite advice that everybody said here, which is exactly true, never give up. Do not give up. It's like everybody that stayed doing it is doing it. So fantastic. David, you have any final words for us?
I just want to thank everybody. I want to thank Sue because usually I'm doing all the interviewing, and it's nice to, be on screen and not have to, do all the interviewing. So my group, Science Writers New York, our next meeting, we're actually going to do one in person on February 13th. It's going to be on drones. And I booked the person before all the news came about the drones in New Jersey and everything else. So now it's a little timely, so that's kind of good.
Cool.
So,
Happy New Year, everybody. Thank you, guys.
thank
Congratulations.
you.
Beautiful books.
Happy New Year.
Thank you for doing this.
Bye-bye.
Later.
Thank you,
Thanks, everyone.
Sue.
Everyone
Thanks,
was
Sue.
great.
It's
Thank
very
you.
inspiring. Happy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.